Yeah, there. So this is my 78 MG Midget. I've had it about, almost a year now. But I just got done installing a Holley Sniper 1100 EFI kit on it. And I figured I'd, give people who are interested a rundown on how I accomplished it. This probably isn't the only way to do it. In fact, if I were to do it again, I would probably change a couple things. But here we have the engine bay and the sniper unit itself. Let's see. So I was originally going to make an adapter plate to adapt the 1100 to the factory intake, but I decided to go the complicated route, and I fabricated this whole custom intake. And I did that because the factory intake, the ports on it, they're only about 1 inch. Actually, I think they're right at 1 inch. Whereas the ports on the head are actually 1.25 inches. And so I decided that I would make a custom intake. And I was going to make it out of 1 inch Schedule 10 stainless pipe. But the ID wasn't that much bigger than stock, so I figured I'd try it out of 1.25 inch pipe, using chunks of 1.25 inch pipe and 1.25 inch pipe elbows. And I think it turned out fine. Granted, the bore is no larger than the factory intake ports on the head, but I'd rather have them a little bigger than smaller. Anyway, so let's see. I was able to reuse the factory throttle bracket and throttle cable. Same bent round bar linkage setup with the spring and the little hair clip or hairpin. But a little bit of thought went into this one because I also wanted to incorporate a mechanical cruise control, if you will. So that's what I did. This second cable here runs to a little choke knob that I put in the car, and that operates a mechanical linkage that locks the throttle open. And I put a lot of thought into that. I didn't want it to be dangerous or anything, but I think I got it squared away to where it's should be fine. Plus, it's not like you can't just put the car in, or hit the clutch, put the car in neutral and shut it off if something goes on. Key is just not to panic. Anyway, so I decided to do a custom coolant bypass pipe because the factory intake has that coolant flow through design, and I didn't want to just run a tube just across, or a coolant pipe or coolant tube just across there. So I opted to go the fancy stainless route, and while I was at it, I put in TIG welded in a 3/4 inch or maybe 3/8 MPT. I can't remember the thread, but it's a MPT T-fitting that I welded in place, so that way I had a place for the required coolant temp sensor for the sniper, because the factory coolant temp sensor right here is, I don't know if it's the correct thread or not, but I didn't want to do away with my factory temp gauge, so I decided to keep it that way. For the wiring, it's super simple. You just hook up your coolant temp sensor. I got a CAN bus splitter that I can hook to a laptop and use a 3.5 inch LCD at the same time. The 10-pin cable, I didn't use anything on it, so I just filled it with hot glue and taped it up real nice. I don't think it's necessary. The instructions say to weather seal it, but I've heard of people not doing that and not having issues. And let's see, you got your O2 sensor and your 7-pin. I have it tucked in there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but that loops around the evap canister, and it includes the built-in relay for the fuel pump, fuse for the fuel pump, and there's a, this is my 12 volt ignition wire. It remains hot during cranking. My actual fuel pump power wire is this one right here. That utilizes a 10 gauge wire that a previous owner ran back to an electric fuel pump back in 2020, I believe. And then let's see, you got a negative and a positive that you have to wire directly to the battery. And then you got the pink wire comes, or yellow wire comes across, and this hooks to the negative terminal on your coil, and that's how the Sniper knows RPM. And I kept the factory electronic distributor because I don't want to mess with anything like that. That's not in my wheelhouse. Let's see. The previous owner installed 3/8 hardline fuel line, which was nice. I reused that. I don't know if you can really see it, but it's right there. But I wrapped it in some insulation so that way the heat won't get to it, because it goes pretty close to the header. Speaking of the header, last year I put on a pace setter header, and I, made a custom aluminum heat shield for it. But I kind of got a little carried away and a little ahead of myself, and I forgot to sandblast the header before I painted it with high temp paint. So it lasted all of, I don't know, an hour of a road trip before the paint all burned off. So I gotta take that off and redo it. Let's see. I'm running the Earl's external fuel gauge. I highly recommend running a fuel gauge, pressure gauge. I see a lot of people having issues with it, and they don't know what the issue is because they don't have a pressure gauge, and it turns out that's their issue. So I'm running this with just the inlet. The outlet is plugged because I have an external fuel pump regulator. I'll try to post some pictures of it because I don't feel like trying to get under the car right now, but it's a cheap, like $40 or $50 Amazon external fuel regulator that has a built-in bypass to return to the tank, which it's mounted basically behind the passenger seat, like where your back would be, up by the axle area. Excuse me. And I have that all hooked in or plumbed in with 6AN fuel line and fittings. And for the filters, I'm using 10 micron Earl's Vapor Guard filter and a 100 micron Earl's Vapor Guard filter. And for the fuel pump, I'm using a Walbro, like 932 something inline fuel pump. It's good to get me 60 psi, and it doesn't need to move a lot of fuel at a time because it's a little 1500 cc thing. It's not sucking on the gas or anything. Let's see here. In the future, I might remove the mechanical fan and put in an electrical. I'm up in the air about that right now. I don't know, but we'll see. Let's see here. I guess I'll fire it up real quick. It's pretty cold today. The engine is 16.2 degrees Fahrenheit. I haven't run it at all in a few days. So let's give her a shot. Let's see. It's like putting on a pair of pants. Let's see. Let the fuel pump prime. Make sure it's in neutral. And another thing with the Sniper, the coolant temperature sensor that you get with it, it's not junk, but it's not good. Like, the engine's 16 degrees Fahrenheit right now, but it's reading 43. I don't think it goes much below 43. I've ordered the recommended replacement. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'll try it out. Let's see. Oh, and for the wiring for the LCD, I just have it going down, and then it goes into the glove box, and there's a hole through the firewall up over in that corner that it's running through. And then same with the USB cable. Let's see. Let's try firing it up. Like I said, she's cold. And I haven't been able to drive it. I've only probably put 30 miles on it since I installed it. But I lost that tune because I went to update the LCD screen or whatever, or the firmware, and I don't know what happened, but I lost it, so now I have to start over from scratch. So I've only gotten idle time on this one, but it's pretty good. A hell of a lot better than the factory Zenith carb. That I would have nothing but trouble with that auto choke. Oh, and this is the choke cable I put in to pull it to set the mechanical cruise. Pardon the rattling, it's a rattly car. But I need to get some miles on it, let it learn a little bit, and then mess with the fuel table and mess with the enrichment and acceleration enrichment and all that stuff. Because it's a little rough to get going, but once it's up to temp, it's actually really decent, nice and smooth. Even when I first got it installed and I drove it probably 30 miles in that one day, it was a lot better than the factory carb. Smoother, felt like I had more power through the whole range of RPM, whereas factory, initial takeoff, yeah, it had a little oomph to it, but it felt pretty anemic, anything over that. But now it's pretty good. Yeah, I need to work on that. I got really rich really fast. Like I said, I just gotta get it out on the road and drive it. But can't right now because we got like 6 inches of snow the other day. But yeah, that's my Midget, and that's my Sniper install. If you have any questions, just throw them in the comments. And I'll try to remember to put some pictures of how I did the fueling on it. If I can figure that out, I suppose. Anyway, thanks for watching. Okay, so instead of just throwing up some pictures, I figured I'd do a little bit of voiceover. So this is under the car. This is the rear axle. This would be the passenger side rear tire. This is the fuel pump right here that I used. Just off to the right here would be the 100 micron filter, and then there's like a 180 degree U-bend out of like 3/8 hard line, and it goes into the bottom pickup port on the gas tank. And anyway, this goes from the fuel pump up the fuel line. Here's a 100 micron, or 10 micron filter, I should say. And that just goes through the fuel line, zip tied up through. There's some hard line right there that I zip tied it to. And that line goes down into the inlet of the fuel pressure regulator, and the return line goes down and then up, and then I have a 6 to 5/16 compression adapter. It compresses, or it's a compression fitting that fits around a 5/16 hard line, that's what the return line is. And then that return line just goes back to a port on the tank. And anyway, that's that. And then the actual fuel supply itself comes out at, I actually have it set to like 58.5, 59 psi. Comes out here and then goes down to another 6 to, it's a 3/8 compression fitting this time, and then it's 3/8 hard line all the way up front until it turns back into the rubber line. This is a pretty cheap Amazon gauge. I don't know how long it's gonna last. If it lasts forever, cool. If not, I'll upgrade it to something better. I haven't read too many bad reviews about it, but I don't have much time with it. So that's how I took care of the fueling. And then another thing I wanted to go over was, let's see here. Let's go over the mechanical cruise setup I have. So this is, actually no, let's back up. This right here, this black piece, that is the remnants of the stock, or the throttle arm that comes from Holley on this unit. And it sticks out, it bends up and then comes out here, and there's like a ball end on it that goes into a ball and socket setup on it would be like a old Ford straight 6. But anyway, you need to keep that because this face right here actually hits the face, no, you can't really see it in this picture, but the face of this raised piece right here on the throttle body itself, and that's your throttle stop. And anyway, so I kept that because it is keyed to the throttle bar and it's peened in place. I wish they would have bolted it, but they peened it. So I had to grind the peening off to remove the arm, and then I had a friend of mine who's a machinist drill and tap a 1032 hole in it. He said he got it about 0.65 deep. And that's what that is right there, is a 1032 stainless screw. Anyway, so I keep that on there for the throttle stop. And then there's a 3/4 inch diameter piece of, I believe I used 10 gauge 304 stainless as a spacer. It's got a 3/16 hole in the center. And then on top of that, this piece right here, that is this arm. This arm has a 3/16 hole here. It's 3/4 diameter, and this hole is also 3/16, and it is 1 inch from center to center. That is that's what this factory Zenith card has, so that way you can get away with reusing your factory throttle cable and don't have to worry about throttle travel or anything like that. That's why I chose that. And then this is like a 1/2 inch diameter or something like that, I'm not sure. Pretty easy to build. And then this right here, this is also 10 gauge 304 stainless. I had it laser cut out. It's got a bunch of little teeth on it, as you can see. And that interfaces with a little arm. I have a little video that I'll show you, but I Loctited the hell out of this screw, by the way. Anyway, looking back, I should have this is like the set angle right here, because this arm, this spacer, and the remainder of the stock arm, I TIG welded everything together so that way it wouldn't move. But looking back, I should have rotated this up probably to about here, because it's just a little too far back, and the factory throttle cable and the one that looks like a little bent up horseshoe that saddles over this, it kind of rubs along the face of that raised piece. And if I had it clocked a little bit farther up, more towards, I don't know, sticking straight out, maybe a couple degrees down, I don't think it would do that. It'd be better in my opinion. That's just another angle. This is where I cut it, and this is the face that actually hits the throttle body to act as your throttle stop. Let's see. Anything else? Oh, one thing I forgot to mention I did was I put in a 42-pound fuel injector. From Holley, they put in a 100-pound injector, and I think it would. Looking back, I think it would have worked, but at the time when I first fired the car up, I noticed that fuel was pooling in the throttle body, and that was my main apprehension with using this in a side draft configuration, because it was built to replace a carburetor that was only ever used vertically, and if it didn't work out, I know I could probably just sell it, but I figured it'd be fine because it's fuel injection. You can make it do what you want it to do. So I decided to go with it, and I was kind of right with that, because I did find fuel pooling in the throat, and a little bit was dripping out, but that was without the fuel filter, the air filter on. So the first thing I thought was, oh, the fuel injector is probably too large. But looking back, I probably could have kept the 100-pound injector and just played with the fuel table, because when I first was looking at the learn table, I noticed it was taking as much fuel out as it possibly could. I think it was 50%. So after I transferred that to those 50% values to the base fuel graph, or fuel table I should say, it still wanted to take more out. So after that, I imagine that would have solved that issue. Let's see here. I guess go over how that works. Nope. There we go. So this is a video I took of it in action, or just operating it with my finger. Here's that toothed arm. The throttle cable comes down through here, locks in place, and there's a hole, or a slotted hole in the end of this arm right here, and the choke cable hooks to the end of that. And so when you're going down the road, you're at a speed you like, you pull that choke cable and it locks the throttle. And when I was designing this, I wanted to be able to disengage it by also pressing in on the choke cable, but after I got it all together and fitted and everything, I realized that the pressure required to actually disengage this with the current teeth geometry, it's excessive. I can't get it done with just pressing in the choke cable. So unfortunately, the only way to disengage it would be to just barely blip the throttle. It's spring loaded right here, and unfortunately you have to blip the throttle, but the car has, what, 55 horsepower or something like that, so it's not going to take off on you. It takes a little bit of getting used to, but like I said earlier, it's not going to get away from you. It should be fine. It'll be a learning curve, but I mean, you're driving a midget, so you have some stuff to learn anyway. Another thing I can show you is apparently, oh, this is the fuel injector. This is the one that comes in. It's 100 pound per hour. That's the part number if anybody's curious. But if you to change the fuel injector, it's real simple. You just pull this screw, gently pull up and out on this, and the fuel injector top pops out, and then you just I don't think I have a picture of it, but the fuel injector is just held in place with O-rings, and there's a single wire or electrical plug that you unplug, and your injector's out. They made that decently simple, at least. Another thing I found out is all the other snipers, I believe, have an intake air temperature sensor, or a manifold air temperature sensor. I think in the software they call it MAT, but on the handheld they call it IAT. Anyway, the 1100, I believe, does not have that sensor, because if you look on the handheld, it'll just say nothing but NA under the IAT temp. And if you do a data log, the MAT value would just be clocked at 60, and it doesn't change at all. And for a second there, I thought I had a defective unit, and I wanted to, see what was up, so I decided to, tear it into a little bit. And you take the front off that says Holley Sniper across the front, and this is the actual ECU. I was hoping, I'd be able to see something, but unfortunately I guess fortunately, it's probably more robust this way, but they potted it with epoxy. And I thought maybe this would be the sensor, but it's actually, that is the actual pressure sensor. It's actually soldered right onto the board. There's a little O-ring, and let's see, yeah, right here. That O-ring interfaces with his face right here, and it pulls the measurement through this channel here, and it measures manifold vacuum, basically. Oh, and this is my adapter that I made. This is a piece of, I should preface that to say that I could not find an air filter that would work in my situation. So I decided to take a piece of 2-inch DOM thin wall tube. It's, I believe, 0.03 wall, maybe 0.06, 0.065. But anyway, I cut it 1.25 long and put a little piece of flap, or a little piece of metal plate across the face of it with a 5/16 hole in the center, and that just screws to the mounting point that they have on the end right here. I don't think I have a picture of that readily available. Oh, and for the evap line right here, or the vent vent line right here, this air filter is for a VW Doom buggy, I believe. I got it from like vdubstore.com or something like that. It came with a 1/2-inch nipple, but it was up here in this corner, and it was too tall to make that bend, so I had to drill my own hole down lower and put in a straight nipple, because the nipple that comes with it is actually a 90, and I couldn't make that work, or I didn't want a long bendy hose to make it work. So I bought a 1/2-inch straight adapter, drilled a hole down in this corner down here, and ran this line to it. That seems to be, I believe that would work, or it should work fine, I suppose. Let's see. Well, I think that's it. Yeah, I believe that's it. Oh, another thing. In order to, if someone chooses to do this, and they go this route of modifying the throttle bar, whatever you do, do not reef on these screws. From Holley, these screws are actually brass. And when I first went to take the butterfly plate out, to remove the throttle bar, I instantly snapped that top one off. Like, barely put any pressure on it, instantly just snap. And then for the second one, they're actually Phillips from Holley, but so I took my screwdriver and I just, worked it back and forth ever so gently for, it took me probably 10-15 minutes to get that little screw out. And going back and forth, it finally worked itself out. I didn't snap that one, luckily. And for this one, I had to get a little micro file I have in there and file off the end of it, so that way I could actually pull the rod out, because that, it's a pretty, not a tight fit, but it's a nice slip fit between the throttle bar and the bore in the throttle body. So the threads of the screw were sticking out ever so slightly, and it was preventing me from being able to get it out. So I had to rotate the throttle bar as far as I could and take my microfile and file the threads off so that way they were flush. And then I had to kind of drill a really small hole through the center and use an easy out pretty much to actually take the remainder of the screw out. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that. Don't go reefing on those. They'll snap real easy. Anyway, I think that's that pretty much covers it, I believe. Maybe in the description I'll throw in some CAD drawings of an adapter plate that you can make up to adapt the 1100 to the factory intake, so you don't have to go through all that hassle of actually making an intake. But yeah, that's that. Thanks.